brought you to Meadowlands Fishery to show you how to catch some massive carp in the edge on our new ground bait, Prime Attrax. When it comes to mixing your Prime Attrax, I've opted for the coarse version today. There is a fine version, but when I'm fishing down the edge, I love the coarse mix. So I've opted for 2 kilos. Again, I'll talk you through that in a second. I'm just going to pop our ground bait in our bucket and then put them underneath so they don't blow away. The biggest thing with this ground bait, before you even add water to it, you'll be able to feel, one, it's quite heavy. It almost feels like sand, but it's very, very oily. And that's really important when it comes to your mixing. So a lot of your ground baits that you might have used in the past, they've got a high content of expander, so it take plenty of water. With this, because it's really oily and the pellets that we've used in it, it doesn't take a lot of water. So when you're mixing this, almost like your traditional old school mixes, little and often is definitely the best way of mixing it. So I'm just going to pull my sleeves up. See, not got too much water. So I'm just going to pour a little bit in and just turn it around with my fingers. And even though I've only added a tiny, tiny bit, you'll be able to see already it's taking that water on. And compared to, you know, some of your other mixes, it'd never go like that with just that amount of water that you've added to it. So biggest thing for me is tiny bit. I'm just going to leave that to settle, and then I just add a little bit as I'm going. So I'll probably leave that sort of 10 minutes. I might have to come back, add a splash more water to it, just dampen it down to the feel. Again, 10 minutes or so later, I keep doing that until it's the consistency that I want it, i.e. it's not drying out. One thing that I do want to talk you through is the use of a riddle. Now, with the fine version, popping it through a riddle is absolutely perfect. Whenever I mix this, because I've got quite a lot of experience doing it, I trust myself that I'm adding just enough water to it and then I can use it. I don't need to use a riddle. But if you want to use a riddle, just make sure that with our coarse mixes, whether it be coarse expander, coarse carp or coarse Prime Attrax, that you opt for a maggot riddle rather than a pinky riddle. If you riddle it and you know that it's wrong, you'll end up with sort of hard lumps of pellets in it. That's the bit that you want to leave in your ground bait. So normally when you riddle it off, it's a case of pushing it to separate the ground bait from the water, where it all gets like a bit clagged up. With this, again, all of our coarse mixes, those are the bits that you want. That's why we designed this mix, to have those bigger food elements for it. But if you literally just stick to that, everyone's got their own unique way of doing it. And if you're ever unsure when it comes to mixing any ground bait, just add a little bit at a time and you're never going to ruin it. But lastly, touching on, just be careful when you're opting for the coarse mixes that you don't use a riddle too fine. And you can see it's absolutely perfect. All I've got to do is just dampen it down and you're not going to go wrong. So nice and simple, stick to that, you'll never go wrong. When it comes to fishing in the edge on big open water lakes like Lambsdown here at Meadowlands, I think the most important thing is the conditions. So looking at it today, it's quite warm, the wind's quite strong, but the biggest thing is it's overcast. Now, if we come today and we didn't have any wind and the sun was out, not a cloud in the sky, all of these big carp that we're going to be trying to catch in the edge, they're just swimming around out in the open water. And then late on, when it cools down a bit, they come in looking for food. So just bear that in mind, whether that's your pleasure session or whether you're fishing in a match. So a bit of advice regarding that. Today, if I drew here in a match, I'm going to talk about a match and a pleasure session, we'd be able to feed the edge quite early, and I think we would get some bites roughly halfway through, say maybe 1, 2 o'clock, because the conditions are absolutely perfect. But if you come again in your match or your pleasure session, what's nice with your pleasure session is you can fish on for a little bit. If it's forecast to be really bright and sunny, don't come and get here at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning. You're much better off having the afternoon at home, or the morning at home, sorry, and then coming out, getting on the bank sort of 12 o'clock, and then start fishing from say 4 till 6, 7, depending on what time the fishery shuts, because you're always going to catch more later in the day. The next thing is, I've decided, right, I think, you know, I'm going to start getting some bites relatively soon, so I want to prime it. If you're on a smaller lake, you don't need to feed as much, but the biggest tip I'd give you when it comes to fishing these big lakes for big fish, you need to feed a little bit of bait. So bare minimum, I would start feeding, I'd probably feed 800 mil or 1000 mil to start with. Just depends on how big your pot is. This one's a 200 mil pot. The conditions, again, look lovely. So I'm just going to start off with 4 pots, because I don't think it's going to be too long before we'll be able to go in and start getting some bites. So to prime it, I've got sweet corn and I've got some worms. Now I never feed worms, but they're a brilliant hook bait. 2 worms and then slapping them on the water so you're stunning them. Again, with big carp, a lot of the time you need to feed a lot of bait. So that's a brilliant standout hook bait. Corn, for me, is a brilliant carp bait. Wherever you go, massive carp, love eating corn. Again, talking about fishing down the edge on these big lakes, volume is really important. So the nice thing about sweet corn is it's dirt cheap. So to start with, to prime it, I'll just put sort of big pinch of corn in there. And then what I'm going to do is fill my pot up with our Prime Attrax and just gently push it down. Now, again, because I'm planning on feeding a volume of bait, the next tip I would like to talk you through is where you actually feed your initial bait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pole pot here. That's where I want my rig to be. From there, it's flat from there to sort of here. And then where I'm going to position my rig, say here, that's where I'm going to fish. This side, it starts gradually coming up like so. Now, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're feeding a lot of bait is they feed it right where they want to fish. I don't want to feed it there, because when these big fish come in, they're going to spread the bait everywhere. So that's where I want to position my rig. What I'm going to do is probably go out 1 foot to 18 inches, and that is where I'm going to prime my peg. So as long as it's sort of 1 foot 18 inches away, it's always going to be down the slope. So in my mind, what's going to happen is the fish are going to come in, they're going to move the bait around, but they're never going to blow it past where I'm fishing. Again, when you've got these big fish, I'm sure there's one in here nigh on 30 pound, you get a few big fish in your peg, and what you don't want to be doing is foul hooking them. So wherever you're fishing, just prime your bait a bit further away. So that's 1 pot. Again, nice big pinch of corn. So I always like feeding some corn with it, because that's a great hook bait. Again, a lot of these big lakes, there's loads of roach, loads of skimmers, so you want a nice hardy bait. So again, 18 inch away roughly. So that's 2. Again, nice pinch of corn. I think the biggest thing when you are again on these lakes is just be aggressive. This might seem like a lot of bait, but if we get one, you know, big fish, sort of 12, 15 pound, it'll come in and it's just easily going to mop all of this bait up. And again, I think when it comes to catching them, not the more fish that are in your peg, but if you've got a bit of competition in your peg where you've got 2 or 3 carp eating the bait, they're a lot easier to catch. Obviously you don't want 200 in your peg, but I think on this type of venue it's very, very rare you get millions and millions come in your peg. Now again, just because it's popped into my mind, if you are suffering where you're going in and you feel like you've got too many fish in your peg, getting liners, you're struggling to hook them, do the same thing of what we've done, but just feed it a metre and a bit away from the bank. Just get the fish away from where you're fishing. So now it's the case, I'm just going to leave it, I'm going to look around, fishing in sort of about 2.5 foot of water, so I'm sure I'll be able to see it mudding up, but I'm just going to leave it alone for a little bit, see what sort of signs I can see, and then when it looks ready to go down and get a bite, then we drop in. Can't wait. So I'm going to start with double worm hook bait. I think when you're feeding ground bait, so it's such a good hook bait. So double worm, just give them a stun. 2, 3, 4. Again, nice sort of positive slap on the water, but not too hard so that you swing them off your hook. And then swing my rig out, just drop it straight down, and then sit and wait for hopefully a nice positive 900 mile an hour bite. That's the ones that we're after. Anything slow, just leave it well alone. You know the bite because it scares you, goes under that quick. So it's nice that it's just sat there. There we are. There we are, that's the bites that we're after. Now this bit is the bit where some you hook and they want to jet ski you around the lake. Others waddle about and you think, oh, he's not really fighting that hard, and you can end up breaking down and then scrambling for your pole. So until I feel, yep, I think it's ready for netting, I'm not even going to entertain sort of breaking down. You see there, sort of wallowing about a bit, and then it sort of charged off. So just try and keep an angle on your pole. Don't point your pole straight at it. Now sometimes if they're running out really hard, actually just lifting your pole up is better than putting it low to the water, because as you pull it up, the fish sort of coming upwards and it'll always turn sort of left or right. So again, if it's just running, just keep your pole up, and then there it turns and then it starts swimming back down. So just nice gentle pressure, just take your time with them, they're big fish. Again, just think about the angle of your pole. Sometimes they're trying sort of straighten you out. So just looking at me pole roller behind me. Again, just nice gentle pressure. Again, letting my tackle do the work. Touching on the tackle, I've got red hydro elastic, 0.22 main line, 0.22 hook length, and a size 12 hook. So no prisoners, no messing around. You look at it and you think, oh, that's a bit crude. And then when you hook one in, it's like you're glad that that's what you picked. So just sort of let them waddle around in front of you. Just a case of just taking your time. They're big, big fish. And just keep the nice angle on your pole. If it runs off, I've got my sections nice and close behind me. You see that ground bait just brought them straight in. I absolutely love it. Sort of clouds the water up, gives them confidence to feed, especially if you've got a peg that's relatively shallow. Can make a massive difference putting ground bait in your peg. I think the biggest thing with carp, with these size fish on these big lakes, the biggest thing is volume. At times you can't feed enough. So again, just nice, gentle, steady pressure. Just waddling around. There he is. Look at that. Great big one. This is why I love this Lambsdown Lake. So get him in head first. He's bigger than me. Wow. That is a stunning fish. I'm going to put my top kit down. He's a big one. You are what we came here for. Great big one. Just take the hook out of him. Wow, we've got to have a picture with that one. Just going to drop my hook bait down. We're not going to have a picture here. We've got a mat behind us, so I think this is the perfect point to cut. And then we're going to go up on our weigh mat so the fish is nice and safe. We'll have a picture with this beauty. What a stunner. Wow, what a start that was. First fish, a great big one, just what we come to Meadowlands for. I'm looking down, I can still see an odd sign, and I think it's easy that when you can see an odd sign that you want to just drop your rig in. There's one a little bit further out from the platform. But I always think when you're fishing for big carp, you just want to feed. See there, big boil, and that's where sort of our bait's been washed everywhere, but we need to get their heads facing the right way. So even though I know there's an odd one there, I think it's easy to be able to drop in and think, well, I'll get a bite. I think if you're fishing right next to the bank, you can drop in because they can't get behind your flow. But here, see there, right where I'm going to position my rig, there's a little vortex, but I want to feed every single time. Biggest thing I think when you're fishing for these big ones is if you can't see signs of them, just feed more bait. It's definitely a case of, I'm not sure, feed more. More rather than less, which I think is why I like it so much. So same thing again, bit of corn topped off with our ground bait. I'm going to go back in on double worm. I think double corns is a great hook bait when there's not as many silverfish, but here at Meadowlands there's loads of roach and skimmers. And don't get me wrong, they're lovely fish to catch, but today we want to just be catching them great big ones. So double worm, two nice biggish worms. Again, just hook them down a little bit so that when you whack them on the water, they're not going to come off the hook. So double worm again. Make sure that my top kit's properly on. See there's a sign of one just past where I'm fishing. So again, hold my rig, just drop it straight down, and then wait. Little liner. Wait for it to be 900 mile an hour. Just like that, and just shipping back because of that platform. Don't want it to be going around that platform leg. Again, this is why you want proper gear on when you're doing this, because they know where everything is. They know where the snags are. But the bottom is so good by them platforms. Again, as he's coming in, he's sort of wallowing. So I feel like I can break down on this one. Looks like a big common. Our other one was a mirror. Just try and lift your pole up at the last minute and then hopefully you can get them in. I love this edge fishing. Still a nice fish, probably 8-9 pound I'd say. So I'm just going to get my disgorger. Just lift my landing at head up. Take the hook out of that one, lovely. Not gonna hold him up for a picture because they're big fish, I don't want to damage them. Oh, take my disgorger out of my mouth. But what we're gonna do, I always like just making sure, just give him a second or two. I can see this one's still lively, he's more than happy to go back. So I can just sort of dip my landing net if he wants to come out, and there he is, safely back. Lastly, finishing on, when you're catching these big fish, be able to see on my rig, sort of one of my shots slid right up. Just double check your rig after every fish because it will move around when you're catching these big fish, especially with a deep landing there, everything's sort of in and amongst it. So just before we start it again, Just going to slide our rig down, just double check my line because I know he was sort of in and around that platform leg. I don't know if he touched it, but just by touching my line, I can feel there's no damage on that. So just a case of doing it all the same. Double check my float to me, bit of Tipex, absolutely perfect. Pop that down, and then just like we started this, I'm doing exactly the same thing. So every time I go in and feed, if I can see them there, I don't need to feed as much. But if you're looking down and you're thinking, I ain't seen one for a little while, maybe they've gone a little bit. It's too easy, and trust me, I've been in this situation in the past where I think, well, maybe if they're not coming in as much, maybe I'm feeding too much. I honestly think with your edge fishing, it's completely the opposite. If they're not coming in, it's because you're not feeding enough. So don't be afraid to pile it in. Everything's been going perfect up to now. Primed our bait, fed, went in, caught a big one. Still fish swimming around, so one pot went in, caught another one straight away. And all of the time it's like that, you just got to keep doing it. You don't have to change anything. But the biggest thing, remember, if you can't see them, just feed that little bit more. One thing that I'd like to talk to you about, I think hook bait wise, I don't know why I'm picking my rig up, I need to feed. Hook bait wise is very much confidence. Some people love dead maggots, they're brilliant. I've caught loads on them in the past, but my go-to baits is always corn, worms on the hook when I'm feeding with ground bait. But one hook bait that can be absolutely deadly, especially for this style of fishing, when you have to feed a lot of bait to get them carp to come in, is paste. And Prime Attrax, both the fine and the coarse version, make a perfect paste because it's got a higher oil content than most ground baits. It doesn't dry out and it just stays lovely and soft. So if you're a paste fan, definitely give it a go. So exactly what we have been doing, because I'm looking down, I can still see signs of fish in my peg, but it's just making sure there's enough bait on the bottom so that they've got something to eat. So again, see there, tail pattern, so I'm just going to feed it a little bit further away. Again, I think that's another great little tip. If you can see them in your peg and you feel like there's too many in your peg, just start feeding it further and further away from where you're fishing. You've got such a big hook bait on, whether it be, you know, double worm or paste. I don't think double corn's as big a bait, but it's such a good target bait there. Find it. 3, 4, make sure my worms are on. I'll be able to see the Meadowlands carp have been testing my gear. So now I've caught 2. Just when I ship out, just check my pole sections are nicely together. And then the same thing, I've just seen a tail pattern here. So again, just hold my rig out, drop it down. Just ignore anything that's slow. Just wait for that lightning fast. So that time, you see how I just left it because I wasn't too sure if it was or wasn't. The fact that it's hooked itself, they're on. But you see, like from that time, if you can see down there, there's still those tail patterns. But making sure that my bait is away from where my rig is, I think is so important when you're fishing for these big fish. Don't try and do everything right on top of each other. What you can do when you're fishing for, you know, F1s, I think accuracy is important, but this is why we plumbed up where we've plumbed up, trying to make sure that you're on that nice flattish bit that most of the time you can find. But I think it's like any type of fishing, when you get a few of the little things right, it just makes it simpler. But I absolutely love this style of fishing. I hope you've really enjoyed today. Wayne said the gate's shut at 6:30, but I think my clock is a little bit slow. I think I'm probably going to be here for a while, but it's absolutely brilliant fun, whether you're in a match or pleasure fishing. Again, biggest thing I would say is think about the time when you come in. Most other styles of fishing, you can come and you can catch them all day, but this edge fishing definitely gets better the later you do it. But it's a lovely big common to finish on. Again, I'm not going to hold any of them up because they're too big. I don't want to damage them unless you've got, you know, an unhooking mat and you can do it safely on the bank. I'll pop that rig down. That is a beautiful common to finish on. Again, quickly touching on, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Get out there and give Prime Attrax a go. These big carp absolutely love it. This is what we designed it for, focusing around these big carp, higher oil. It's just got everything that these fish absolutely love. So until next time, best of luck when you go out, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.